In today's show, we're going to do it like a football match. We're going to divide it into two halves. First half, even though the title of the show is How Do We Help Patients with COVID, that's going to be the second half. First half, we're going to look at prevention with a brilliant guest, Jon Burgess, who's a wellness expert from the sunny Midlands where I live. And then in the second half, we're going to go for an update from the brilliant Patrick Holford, who is going to give us an update of what's happening around vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc, and so on, and work on how we can help patients that have got the dreaded virus. I hope you're staying safe at home. Our love goes out to everybody, your families and all. And hopefully you're really going to love this sort of two-half show today. Let's dive straight in with our food fact. And so many of you have been saying, Steve, your maths, it's appalling. You keep forgetting different days and numbers. Here we go. Don't worry about the numbers. It's as simple as that. Just worry about what the fact is. And today's fact is almond. And what we're asking you to do, just write down the word almond. And then at the end of lockdown, however long that's going to be, we will ask you to list as many as you can remember from all the different days, all the different shows. What we're on now, about day 30 or something. And we'll have a competition with prizes. I'm a bit wired this morning. I'm on today's day 4 of my 5-day fast. I'm on day 4 without any calories. You can look further down on YouTube. I'm doing a diary every day. I haven't yet measured my ketone level today, but yesterday it was up at 1.1, so I'm kind of happy with that. Buzzing, no calories. I mean, I'm having coffee and I'm having tea and loads of water. In fact, I say no calories, that's a lie, because I'm having my omega-3 every morning, which is about 8 or 9 calories in 1 gram of fat. But there you go. Feel great, feel wired. Today, though, almonds, one of the best nuts. One of the first things I'm looking forward to after my 5-day fast ends this Friday evening. I will be having a handful of almonds. They are full jam-packed of goodness. Not only that, they're your flexible friend when you go low carb, you see, because not only can you eat them as almonds, you can get almond flour, and almond flour along with coconut flour is the perfect replacement for naughty carb flour. You can make bread, you can make biscuits, you can make all sorts out of almond flour. So almonds need to become, along with cauliflower and avocado and eggs, your best new friend. Good morning to everybody that's online. I'm sorry yesterday we didn't get around to answering everybody's question, but today I will make sure that I get to as many people as humanly possible in the chat today. Without further ado, God, crikey, I sound like a presenter. Right now, let's go and speak to Jon Burgess, who's in Leamington Spa. Good morning, Jon. How are you?
Good morning, Steve. I'm really well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, really good. Just noticed my voice is going a bit croaky, but that big guy in the States has all those people following him. He has a croaky voice, so it probably won't be that bad. Now, you're in your man shed, you told me.
I am, yeah, very blessed. I've got a man shed. I mean, it's a brick building. It's a proper building, and right at the bottom of my garden. So, you know, it works really well with the homeschooling side, at the family at the house, and me doing what I do down here, working online a lot.
How many children you got at home at the moment?
2 girls, yeah, 13 and 11.
Oh, okay. Well, I've got a 12-year-old girl at home, a 16-year-old girl, an 18-year-old boy who's driving the show, a 4-year-old son at home, and a one in the middle somewhere, 14. And I tell you what, I would love a man shed. Right now, I would love to be in my man shed, but we're in the dungeons under the house. But there you go. So tell us all about yourself. And I've said we'll divide the show into 2 halves. Later, we're going to hear from Patrick Holford, who's got loads of research around vitamins, minerals, and what we can be doing in the hospital, both for the patients and for our brilliant NHS staff. But let's talk about prevention. What could we be doing at the moment on top of social distancing, washing our hands? What else can we be doing to try and prevent this thing, you know, or if, let's not say pretty much prevent, but prevent the severity of it if it comes knocking on our door?
Yeah, there's a list of things we can be doing right now, and it's not just about doing 1 or 2. It's looking at multiple actions that we can take, and it's something I've been talking about for a while. Is prevention is better than cure, for sure, and putting ourselves in the strongest place of health. And I've been saying this for years. Is, you know, there's 2 main reasons why we need to take responsibility for our own health right now, and really number 1 is. We live in a time where there's been an epidemic of epidemics. We've got the heart disease epidemic, the diabetes epidemic. We've got neurological diseases on the rise, the cancer epidemic. etc., etc. And then we've got a pandemic on top of that. So, there's plenty of evidence there to motivate us to move away from or put ourselves in a better position to reduce our risk of being a statistic in the statistics within these epidemics and pandemic. And then really number two reason for taking responsibility and changing improving our health is to live life on the best terms we can, with the most energy, the most vitality, so that we can perform best in our professional lives, we can have energy left for ourselves in our personal lives and do the hobbies we want to do. And so that same message really applies in what we're faced with right now. And it's about being the strongest and most resilient version of ourselves. So either to prevent or, it is to move through it with more ease if we're stronger in our health to do so. So, and I haven't quite answered your question there yet, have I, Steve?
No, it's absolutely fine, because you painted the picture really, really well, in the sense, if you're quite like a politician, you paint the picture, don't answer the question, but I'm sure you will in a second. But I'm not having a go at politicians, they're wonderful. Especially as we just had Tom on a few days ago. But the point is, isn't it, we have got all these epidemics going on, and what I didn't realise about 4 years ago, till I started to sort my own health out, is they're kind of, they call it metabolic syndrome, don't they? They're kind of all interlinked, and they're all interlinked to too much insulin. They're all interlinked to the food choices we're making and overloading on carbohydrates and so on. And a step in the right direction for any one of those epidemics is kind of a step in the right direction for all of them.
100%. So the steps that I prioritize and I look at is making sure that people are, nutritionally well fed, they're getting the best nutrition they can, the highest quality they can. They're on top of that, they're looking at getting the best sleep we can, making sure we're getting some movement, we're taking care of our minds, and we're taking time out to relax as well. And for me, that's a formula, a recipe that certainly lays down some strong foundations.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of a holistic approach. We call ours the Leon principle. You've got to get your lifestyle sorted out, as in your sleep, getting out in the sunshine, your exercise. You've got to sort your environment out, so try and avoid all the toxins all the time that we put in creams, potions, lotions, too many mobile phones up to the head. And then the key bit, the ON, the optimal nutrition, which probably out of all of them, if you have to prioritize, you prioritize your nutrition first, because then once you start to get healthy, you'll have more energy, you'll literally do more exercise, where so many people, and I feel so sorry, I almost want to stop my car sometimes. You see people that are slogging their guts out trying to jog, and they're like 20, 25 stone, and you go, oh my God, crikey, let's get your food sorted out first, because, otherwise you just haven't got that energy, you damage your knees, your joints and everything. So I'm sure you probably agree that, you start with nutrition first, and then add on all those other things. And don't you find as well, when you start with nutrition first, then all of a sudden your sleep does get better, and you sort of do get more relaxed anyway?
I think with nutrition and sleep, Steve, it really works both ways. I think, yes, the nutrition absolutely impacts the sleep. I'm seeing huge improvements in people's sleep for changing their nutrition, working on their microbiome, their gut health, and they start sleeping so much better. However, I also see it the other way around as well, because we know that if people aren't sleeping very well, then they actually end up feeling tired the next day. They end up craving more sugar and more caffeine potentially to give them that short energy boost. And it can be inner warfare going on, because they're trying to keep healthy and well and make good choices, but their body's crying out for something very different. So, that's why I think it's important to work on both together. It really is.
That's a really, really good point. And I'd never thought about it that way round. Because I always said, there's got to be a chicken and an egg. There's got to be one trumps the other. But you're absolutely right, aren't you? Because if you don't get a good night's sleep, you're tired, and the body straight away goes, I need energy, because you haven't slept properly. And the body knows that one of the quickest ways to turn food into energy is go sugar or carbs or bread. And therefore, you start that sugar craving. Whereas if you had a good night's sleep, away you go.
This is it. I mean, for me, I look at it and think, what does the body need? And to function well, and how long could we live for without movement, for one? That's the first question I often ask clients, and they go, well, maybe a few months, or maybe even a few years, and they'd be right. I'd say years, or even there's examples of decades. How long could a human being live for without food? Generally, maybe 4-6 weeks, there or thereabouts. How long would we live for without sleep? 3 weeks generally. We would die of sleep deprivation before we die of food deprivation. You probably know where I'm going next. I'm going to say water, a matter of days, breathing, a matter of minutes. So with that in mind, I think the focus is therefore breathe deeply, breathe well, learn how to do that, hydrate effectively, sleep as well as you can, get the best nutrition you can, and you will have the energy to want to move more, and that bolts on the end. So that recipe with all of those points really helps create optimal living, as well as managing the mind, of course.
That's brilliant. I've never heard it like that before. In fact, I'm going to pause this later on today and write all that down, because you're right. You know, how long could you do without food? How long without sleep? How long with water, without breathing? And then maybe prioritising that. I hope you all like that one. Let's have some comments on that one in a minute. That's really great advice. That really, really good advice. Okay, so maybe Jon didn't get a lot of sleep last night. He's just frozen on our screen. I hope he's got oxygen in his shed there. We'll get Jon back in a moment. Wasn't that fascinating? I'd never thought about it like that before, because I always prioritise food first, get your food right, and everything else will fall in line. But actually, maybe you've got to prioritise maybe getting your sleep right first, because then you won't be craving so much energy first thing in the morning. Let's go and say hello to a lot of people that are joining us this morning as we reach out to get Jon back with us. First, happy birthday. I hope you're enjoying it. Whose birthday is it this morning? I don't know. Oh, Sarah Haverson. Happy birthday, Sarah. Happy birthday from us all at Primal Living. Morning team, says everybody. Hi all from Bristol, says Jackie. Her name is Jackie Glasgow. I'm sorry, I've been saying Jackie from Glasgow all week, but it's Jackie Glasgow from Bristol. Everybody's saying happy birthday. Everybody's wishing you happy birthday. Marvelous says almonds, a little roasted in the oven and even taste better. Yeah, I've got a recipe in Primal Gourmet, and one of my favourite things to do is to take a load of nuts and to roast them with black pepper and occasionally, if you want to be a little bit naughty, you can put maybe a little bit of honey in there as well. But there's other ways to make them really, really tasty. So, yeah, putting them in. Did you mention mind, brain, well-being? We did, and we're going to carry on with that in a moment as we get Jon back. Sleep is a weapon, says Andrew Hunt. Yeah, I mean, a few years ago with Jack, who's producing the show today, when he was 8 years old when we crossed the Atlantic?
Yeah.
So when Jack was 8 years old, everybody thought I was mad because I'd never done a big voyage like that before. And I took Jack and my dad and my father-in-law and my secretary Barry and his Jack's elder brother Matt, who was I think 16, 17 at the time. And we sailed across the Atlantic. And literally for the first week, couldn't sleep at all because nobody knew what they were doing. Nobody had been on a boat even for one night before that, apart from me. So I've got a whole crew that were inexperienced, and I was responsible for them, which is a crazy, crazy thing to do, but kind of that's just, I'm a bit crazy. And I didn't sleep for a week, and I can tell you, when you are sleep deprived, it does all sorts of weird things for the body. It sends you almost crazy in the head, and you start to lose. So sleep. Don't underestimate how important sleep is. And I love what Jon said then. He said that, yes, you can just focus in on food like I tend to when I'm trying to help somebody, but maybe sometimes turn that priority around and say, look, you can't live without breathing for very long at all. So start getting our breathing working right. And then, of course, sleep, and then water. You can't live for more than a couple of days without drinking water. So you've got to get hydration into the body. And ask yourself the question, if you're watching right now not feeling very well, how often do you drink a glass of water? Because I've got one doctor friend who says nearly 9 times out of 10 when people aren't well, his first question is, how hydrated are you? And there are books and articles out there that say, water is the miracle cure. Now, you can't have too much of it. You can overhydrate and then deplete your salts in the body, but very, very few people go that far. A good 2 or 3 litres a day for most people. But sadly, most people think, well, I'm having a coffee, I'm having a tea, having a glass of wine, that's all liquid, that's all hydration. It's not. In fact, that's the opposite. Every time you have a coffee or a tea, because of the caffeine in there, it dehydrates you. So you need even more water. So getting water in is really important. Getting a good night's sleep, extremely, extremely important. And of course, the big crux of what we talk about, getting real foods. Now, as we try and get Jon back, remember this is partly about education, partly about helping you and keeping you entertained, hopefully through lockdown. It's giving my son Jack something to do, although he did say, Dad, I am still also working from my university stuff. And hopefully it's informing, but also we're trying to raise money for the Trussell Trust, who operate 1,250 food banks across the UK, trying to raise money, trying to raise awareness for them, because sadly every single day, and more so at the moment, people are going without food. In fact, let's show you a small little film about how you can help.
Last year, food banks in the Trussell Trust's network distributed almost 1.6 million three-day emergency food supplies to people in crisis. That's a 19% increase from the previous year and 73% more than what was distributed 5 years ago. The main reasons for people needing emergency food are benefits not covering the cost of living, or delays, or changes to benefits being paid. People are being pushed into poverty because there isn't enough money coming in to cover the costs of essentials. It's not right that anyone is forced to turn to a food bank as a result. We all have a responsibility to play a part in ending hunger and poverty in the UK. Together, we can make it happen. This can change.
So anything you can do to help the Trussell Trust, that would be fantastic. Now, let's try and reconnect to Jon, who is in his man cave at the bottom of his garden. Jon Burgess, health and wellness expert from Leamington Spa. Great advice so far, Jon. Have we got you back?
I hope so.
Yeah, we have. See, that's what happens when you're that's what happens when you're an Aston Villa fan, mate. You're always getting relegated.
Hey, you're going to lose me friends saying that.
So before we lost you, great bit of advice about thinking about priorities for health around how long can the body sustain without air, without water, without sleep, and so on. So let's pick up from there. So we've got the priority right. What should we be eating to best ward off illness, do you think, at the moment?
There's a few things for me that are really critical. One is antioxidants, the wonderful berries and colourful fruits and vegetables that provide so many rich ingredients and nutrients like vitamin C, vitamin E, zinc, etc. So getting our greens in as well, super helpful. And on top of that, it's a huge part of our immune system, we know, is located within our gut health, around about 70%. So looking after our bacterial health in our gut, the microbiome is also key, we know, which is, making sure we're having those fermentable foods, whether it's kimchi, the kombuchas, the pickled foods, and on top of that, maybe even supplementing. Certainly, it's something I do to support our gut bacteria. So that for me is really important, as well as balancing our blood sugar levels, so that we don't put excess stress and excess cortisol creation in our body. So, and
have you got any sort of top three favourites food-wise that you say, well, I could, if I was on a desert island with my two daughters, what would be the three foods that you would not do without?
The berries, the strawberries, the blueberries, the raspberries. I think they're fantastic. Love them first thing in the morning on a bit of coconut yogurt and some nuts and seeds thrown on. So quick and easy, so tasty. And actually, I think as I'm saying that, the nuts, because I know they're just so nutrient rich. We've got the wonderful fats in there. We've got the almonds you mentioned earlier, just fabulous with the zinc and vitamin E that they have as well. So the nuts. And then, what would be the third one? Well, I start every morning with hot water and lemon, and I think that's really powerful in its own way too. So there you go. There's the three off the top of my head.
That's brilliant. In fact, we were away just before lockdown with an adults skiing weekend, and a friend of mine, she was doing the lemon with the ginger. Now, I love ginger, but I'd never thought about just getting a glass of hot water, I've done the lemon for years, but she's put the ginger in. I thought, hang on a minute, I love ginger, let's try it. And now I'm addicted to it. It's brilliant. I mean, I love flavoured teas and so on. I don't drink regular tea, but I love flavoured teas, and just having a hot drink just cleanses you and you feel great.
Oh, yeah, and I just feel it kind of sink deep into the soul. It's just, I love it, absolutely love it.
Well, my son Jacko was doing that when you were saying that, because every morning, the second we finished this show, He's upstairs doing exactly what you just said. He gets all the berries. I mean, it costs me a fortune having 5 kids at home at the moment because they all see him doing it. Well, no exaggeration, we probably get through 3 of those big tubs of blueberries every day. Blackberries, at least 2 strawberries and a raspberry every day.
A raspberry, not a raspberry.
No, 2 trays of raspberries.
Yeah.
And we go with all natural Greek yogurt, which is live, so that you've got the live fermentation in there. Great way to start the day off. Now, I'm sure we've got loads more questions coming in. Andrew says, taking a Primal vitamin C tablet in my water bottle, 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, helps remind me to drink at least 2 litres. That's a really good point there, Andrew. My wife has always been ridiculously bad at drinking, well, his mother over there, ridiculously bad at drinking enough water until she found a drinking bottle that she really liked. Yeah, the colour was nice and it was nice to drink out. And all of a sudden she's perfectly hydrated. It's sometimes having a water bottle as opposed to just getting a glass all the time can make all the difference. Steve, please show me where to look for your last 4 days diet. If you look down the bottom of our homepage on Primal, Living Marvellous, it is there, but it's kind of not a diet, it's just no food. So, but don't try a long fast until you've kicked the carbohydrates, otherwise it's miserable. Whereas once you've kicked the carbs and you're used to burning body fat, I haven't felt hunger. In fact, today's the first day I've not had a single sort of little notification from my hungry hormone, Mr. Greelin. Feel great this morning. How long between the hot water with lemon and the breakfast was a question for you?
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I keep it around about half an hour apart, food from liquids, because what we know is that when we put fluids on top whilst we're eating, and I used to do this, it actually dilutes the enzymes that are needed to break down food. So keeping them apart is really helpful. And actually, a lot of people notice a reduction in wind and gas when they do that, or bloating as well, because they digest better, because it's important we are what we absorb and digest, not just what we eat.
That's great advice. We are what we not just eat, we are what we absorb and assimilate from the food. That's great advice. Children home. It's okay, Steve. I keep... Marvellous must be one of my customers from my jewellery company. It's okay, my kids are at home, but I'm still buying your jewellery. Thank you indeed very, very, very much. That's a great point you just raised there, because we are what we eat. I also normally add to that, we are what we eat. So your plants need to be grown in soil as opposed to hydroponically. Your meat needs to have been grazing on grass like it was supposed to, not fed corn. We are what we eat. Then people go, we are what we eat, but you've just added there, we are what we get at, what we absorb from the nutrition. Because I take it then, when we're talking about the microbiome, you can sometimes have nutritionally dense food, but not necessarily get all that vitamins and minerals out of it.
Absolutely. And that's where I feel there's many things to take into effect to make sure we're digesting and absorbing properly. One of them, as I've just mentioned, about the water. Another one, making sure we're relaxed when we eat. And we're sat in a good posture when we eat. We're enjoying the food. We're chewing our food and eating slowly. Because if we're stressed when we're eating, the blood is being thrown to the muscles to go into fight or flight. At that point, priority isn't to digest and break down the food. So yeah, there's a few key, and then we've got to have the right balance of microbiome that helps to actually break down that food as well. So I know people are investing money in high quality food, which is fantastic, but it's how can we get the most from that high quality food and pay attention to how we digest.
So that is, like you just said, taking your time to eat, not being stressed. And that's where a lot of people go wrong with fast food, isn't it? They kind of get the idea it's unhealthy, and they know it's a bit of a naughty cheat day when they have the McDonald's or the KFC. But it isn't just the fact that they're not using the best oils and it's not that nutritionally dense, but the fact that you're standing up and eating on the go, the fast food, the word fast is in the title, that's probably the worst thing we can be doing for our health.
Oh, they've got the fast music in the background, so customers go in and out quickly. What you want, you go to a great restaurant where you pay more money to sit and enjoy the food, but there's relaxing music. They're allowing you to relax. They're creating an environment for you to relax. So not only are they providing better food, they're providing the environment to actually digest and absorb it better.
Yeah, maybe actually thinking about it, fast foods with that loud music get you in and out. Maybe you don't want to be absorbing what's saying that anyway. The devil's kitchen, I call all those places. But the really good part, we talked about this with a guest a couple of days ago, that that French paradox of people for years, they thought, well, the French live longer because they've got loads of red wine, and it wasn't really the red wine that was making them live longer. It was just that 2 hour, or well, not always, but they're more renowned for taking time to eat, more renowned for getting the entire family around the dinner table and making an event of it and making it social. Whereas I think in the UK, we hardly ever use a dining table anymore. Many people, because you can put it in the microwave and get it out in a minute. So the actual event of creating the meal was not an event. Therefore, the eating the meal is not an event. Whereas what we tend to find, for example, Sunday lunch in our family, we always still try and do the roast on a Sunday and wherever possible with the kids most nights. But because you've actually cooked it and prepped it and spent your time doing that, you spend more time eating it.
Yeah, and coming together as a family, it's something we really, prioritize to sit and enjoy. I love Italy, and it's the same thing in Italy. It's just, it's an event. We share the news of the day. We enjoy the food together, the flavors of the food, and we're certainly turning off the TV 99% of the time, unless there's a key sporting event, which is a rarity rather than the norm, or and it's a special occasion. Well, either you want to call it special, but when that happens. But certainly making sure the news isn't on, and the reality for a lot of people can be that they wake up, they're eating breakfast, and they're watching the news as they're eating it, and that's never really that positive and could be seen as pretty stressful right now. Yeah.
And just to recap on something you said a moment ago, because it's so valid, that people have to realize that when we're stressed, the body doesn't know, as far as I understand psychologically wise, what's causing the stress. It doesn't know that there's not a lion chasing you. The body just knows it's stressed. And the more stress you've got, the more closely it thinks that lion is. And therefore you are in fight and flight mode. And one of the last things your digestion system is going to do is digest your food while you're stressed, because it's all about staying alive at that point. Whereas if we can totally relax and chill out while we're eating our foods and have a great conversation, and the temperature of the room be right, and the ambience be right, and the music be right, we're so relaxed that then we've got time to digest our food properly and get and unlock all that nutrition you've been talking about.
100%. So my message is be proactive. Everybody listening, be proactive about creating that ideal environment for your meals.
Yeah, it's great. In fact, yesterday's guest was saying that it's terrible that in some places in London, there are new flats being built without even a kitchen, which means you just got a microwave and fast food. Flats being built without a dining table. So we're almost forcing the next generation into that fast food, sitting with it on your lap on the sofa, as opposed to really sitting down and enjoying the meal. Jon, it's been fascinating having you on. Can we get you on again sometime in the future?
Oh, I'd love to. So much more to share.
Absolutely. And as soon as it's locked down, because now we know we only live not so far away from each other, you've got young daughters, let's all get together and have a social meal once we're all out of lockdown.
Hey, I would love that, Steve. It'd be an absolute pleasure. Maybe even share a Villa match together. Who knows? We'll
do that, my friend. Don't know which division we'll be in, but we'll do that. Yeah. God bless you. That was a brilliant Jon Burgess. I will just tell you his website if you want to follow Jon and get some help and advice from Jon. It is Jon Burgess, but Jon. In fact, it's on the screen down here. Do go out and check Jon out. A real fantastic wellness coach. Great advice there about thinking about how long we can sustain without breathing, without water, without sleep, and so on. So that was really good advice. Now, before we get Patrick Holford on to talk about how we can help those patients that have already suddenly got COVID, and many of our brilliant NHS staff have sadly come down with COVID too. I'd like to share a video with you. Have we got that available to share, Jack? We have. Have a little look at this.
So far we have used around 50 patients already, and based on the preliminary the results, and we found the mortality for the patients using vitamin C is around 24%, while the mortality from the control group is the 35%. Decrease the IL-6 level compared to the control group, significantly decrease the the duration of the mechanical ventilation.
This is not the virus that's hurting the host, it's the acute inflammatory dysregulated response. That's why you need to use vitamin C and steroids. If you look at the Shanghai guideline, they did 3 things. They gave heparin, they gave vitamin C, and they gave steroids.
Having seen what vitamin C could do, I decided to start giving vitamin C very early. Let's say you're a patient that comes to me with shortness of breath and an abnormal CT scan like the ones that have circulated among some of us. And that is the moment when I put in my intermediate unit and I start you on the cocktail. And we've had several variations of what we have done for the cocktail. I have not had a single death, not one death. And I'm getting slammed with 4 to 5 patients unit minimum. You don't need to sell me the vitamin C thing. I know it works.
Intravenous vitamin C, intravenous ascorbic acid, along with corticosteroids, given at the right time, not for mild illness. This is for when the oxygen is dropping, the virus is essentially taking over the lungs, a massive inflammatory response is occurring, and it needs to be done extremely expeditiously within hours, if possible, of presentation to emergency rooms.
When a person starts to have sore throat or nose running, he or she should start take regular vitamin C, for example, 1 gram per every hour.
I take 1 gram of vitamin C twice a day to support my general and immune health, and 1 gram an hour if I get any symptoms of a cold. I've rarely suffered for more than 24 hours, never taken a day off work.
In 1976 to 1977, when another swine flu epidemic is expected, it is especially important that everyone know that he can protect himself to a considerable extent against the disease and its consequences by the use of this important nutrient, vitamin C.
Wow, that was so powerful, Patrick. Thank you for sharing that with us. Let's dive straight. Well, first of all, good morning to you.
Good morning.
I believe you've been on the radio this morning already.
Yes, I've been on the radio, and last night I was in California. This is the issue. I'm talking to the doctors in China, and they're sort of, I don't know, about 12 hours ahead, and then I'm talking to the Californians, and they're 8 hours behind. So at 3 a.m, I was in California, and before that I was in China. It gets a bit confusing.
But just so you know, You're in the UK right now.
Thank you.
And it's about 10:30 in the morning.
Yeah. But I have some very exciting news.
Yeah, I mean, talk us through what we just saw in the video, because that was powerful.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's a growing number, maybe 20, 27 ICUs in America now who are using this combination of intravenous vitamin C and steroids, and they're getting virtually no deaths. So, for example, I spoke to one man you saw in the film called Professor Paul Marek, and he's had 40 people through his ICU, his intensive care unit, with COVID-19, and 38 have been released. 2 died. One was, but they were both over 85-year-old. One had end-stage liver cirrhosis. In other words, they would die soon anyway, I'm sorry to say. And the other one had end-stage lung disease. So other than that, they all left. And in fact, he told me, and I recorded this because I have a podcast on my site that went out, it's live now with Dr. Paul Marek. One person was admitted into their unit dead, that had a heart attack, and they gave them the intravenous vitamin C and the steroids, and they came back to life. I mean, they actually came back to life. Wow. So that was one of the 40. But Paul Marek told me something very, very interesting. And I know I've sent you just the sound file. I don't know if you have that, maybe with a picture of Paul Marek.
We do, indeed.
But just play this, because this is really a game changer.
Okay. I have a colleague who's actually measured vitamin C levels in COVID patients, and they're undetectable. Undetectable. The levels are so low in all COVID patients they cannot be detected. So we absolutely know that patients who COVID, apart from all the other benefits, are absolutely profoundly deficient in vitamin C. So all of them actually meet the diagnostic criteria for so-called scurvy. So just on that basis, there shouldn't be so much controversy about giving vitamin C. These people have a disease-induced scurvy.
Wow.
Now, this is a game changer. I just got off a radio show in Ireland, and the interviewer was saying that the HSE, the official group in Ireland, say you only need 40 milligrams a day of vitamin C, which you could get in half an orange, and its function is purely to prevent scurvy. And this, of course, is the tremendous misunderstanding that exists throughout the medical profession, that the only function of vitamin C is to prevent scurvy, and that just is not true. But that's kind of where they're stuck. However, the conventional medical treatment of scurvy, very low vitamin C, is intravenous vitamin C. So if a doctor has a patient, and what Paul Marek is saying is that every single ICU patient with serious COVID-19 acute respiratory distress has scurvy. If they knew that, or suspected it, or tested it, then they would be obliged, under the principles of medicine, to give them intravenous vitamin C.
Right, yeah, yeah. It's just so sad, isn't it, that, obviously we're chasing a vaccine, we're chasing new drugs, and there was something on the BBC this morning that one might be making a bit of a difference, and so on and so forth. But it's terrible that the answer might be right there in the palm of the hand, just as Linus Pauling was telling us for the last 30-something years of his life.
Well, it's true, but there has been an extra discovery, and the Americans have made this. The Chinese didn't really make this. The Chinese started using high-dose vitamin C in all hospitalized patients, over 6 grams, up to 20 grams, a gram an hour. We've spoken about that. And that prevents the conversion into this acute respiratory distress stage. Then they gave intravenous vitamin C. But when someone goes into this acute reaction called the cytokine storm, as Professor Paul Marek explained in the film, it's not the virus that kills them. It is this massive inflammatory reaction. And normally, to calm down a massive inflammatory reaction, what you do is you give a steroid drug. Cortisone, for example. We have cortisone creams and cortisone asthma inhalers and all sorts. I remember when I had damaged my shoulder that they gave me a cortisone injection, and I watched the shoulder in real time being x-rayed, and you could see the inflammation, and in went the needle, out came the cortisone, and down went the inflammation. So there is nothing more powerful than cortisone. And cortisone is a mimic of our adrenal gland's own hormone, which is called cortisol. By the way, there are various different drug names, like prednisolone is effectively the same thing. That's what doctors use. Now, what's fascinating, and I actually learned this, just recently from Paul Marek, is that the adrenal glands, which make cortisone, actually store vitamin C. They have 100 times more vitamin C than anywhere else in the body.
Wow.
And when you go into a state of stress, the adrenal glands actually secrete vitamin C into the blood. Yes, what we're looking at here, let me explain. ACTH down the bottom, this is called a adrenocorticotropic hormone. It's a message that the brain sends. So if you're under stress, let's say you're about to be eaten by a lion or something, or attacked, your brain sends this chemical, ACTH, a hormone, which tells the adrenal glands to release cortisol. But what you're seeing here, this is looking at the adrenal vein. In other words, the blood supply coming out of the adrenal glands when stimulated. And what you're seeing in red is this massive release of vitamin C when we are in a moment of acute stress. I mean, interesting. In other words, vitamin C is a stress hormone. Now, what's happening, and this is what the Americans suss, mainly Professor Paul Marek. He is really, if anyone deserves a Nobel Prize at the end of this, it really is him. Because what happens is if you've got people effectively with scurvy, because the virus just consumes your vitamin C at an enormous rate, then the adrenal glands can't function. They can't produce cortisone, they don't release vitamin C, you don't get the reduction in inflammation, and basically the body can't fight and you die. So what these doctors have found is that by combining high-dose vitamin C with cortisone, steroids, they're just ending this. There need be no more deaths, except in someone who may be already, terribly compromised. And by the way, I want to emphasize here that you don't want to be using steroids at an earlier stage of the infection. This is only when the whole inflammatory process has taken over. So, if you get the symptoms of flu and you're feeling pretty rough and all the rest of it, do the high dose vitamin C. There are other things like zinc and vitamin D, that are really, really good for you. If you get to the point where you are actually finding it difficult to breathe, shortness of breath, you need to get to hospital. A lot of people are very worried. They don't want to go to hospital, but you need to go to hospital because they will give you oxygen and they will, it's at that stage that things are getting quite serious and you need some intervention. Of course, we wish that the hospitals were doing what's actually working in the US. And by the way, animals produce so much more vitamin C. This is animals that make vitamin C when under stress or when exposed to a virus. So we can also learn from this in the sense that if you're very stressed out, take some more vitamin C. I mean, we're getting some amazing reports from people during COVID-19 who are saying their sugar cravings are less on the vitamin C. They're losing weight. They're feeling much calmer. They're having more energy. These are what we call, the side effects. It's quite extraordinary. And also this group of doctors in the States and the ones in China have not had one single adverse reaction. Not one single problem. So what we're talking about here, even if you don't believe it, is completely safe. And I always think the best way to test any theory is just to do it yourself.
Yeah, so, when this broke out, the first thing we did across our entire company was give everybody 21 grams of vitamin C tablets and say, just keep those at home. And if you start to feel unwell, start to take them because it's so powerful. Also noticed on the list from in China, so the steroids, the vitamin C, and something I've not heard of before.
Heparin.
Heparin? What's heparin?
It's an anticoagulant, and basically this virus starts really attacking the throat and the nasal passages, just like any cold or flu does. And that process generally is taking about a week. It then moves down into the lungs. And that's when it gets, more serious. And that's why when you're having, difficulty breathing, you really need to, take this thing quite seriously. and it attacks the little balloon-like pockets in the lungs called the alveoli, and you get blood clots, you get blood clotting, and these clots can be, quite big, and they will further restrict the flow of blood and hence oxygen and cause all sorts of problems. So it's pretty standard in this state of cytokine storm. So this isn't a new discovery. All doctors have already been giving anticoagulants. But I think what the Americans are saying, which is slightly new, is you go to the sort of highest therapeutic dose of anticoagulants. But I can't, really talk about that. I'm not a doctor. I know about nutrition. But yes, those were the three things: intravenous vitamin C, steroids, and anticoagulants. That seems to be what's really working. And I mean, this is tremendously good news, because from my point of view, as I look at all the evidence and I look at the logic of it and I look at the clinical results that are being reported, I think we can say that we've cracked the COVID code. This does not need to be a fatal disease if it's handled properly. And of course, if people started early, I mean, as the Chinese did, actually encouraging people. There was a lovely story in the papers in China of a family. They were all taking 6 grams. This was sort of like 3 generations: kids, parents, grandparents, all taking 6 grams of vitamin C. Because one of the things we don't know right now, they shipped in 50 million grams of vitamin C. I mean, it's a lot. And we don't know. And I was asking my contact in China, what exactly happened to it. But we do know that it was given to hospital workers and patients and used intravenously in the ICUs. But also, I believe that it was handed out effectively in the streets to other people. So it was very standard, by late February, that people were just doing this. And of course, here's the massive difference. It's kind of Chinese policy, and yet here we are saying nonsense, rubbish. I'm an LBC. There was some doctor there saying, no, it's rubbish. You don't need vitamin C. It's all a con and so on. And
well, as you always do, you get the doubters. I had an email from somebody yesterday saying, well, I've just been speaking to my doctor about your advice on vitamin C. And he said, what was Mr. Bennett advising? He said, well, 1-2 grams a day. And he went, well, tap, 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 tap. Well, it's supposed to be 0.08 of a gram per day. So that's dangerous. And I had to write back to the customer. And I just said, look, everybody's welcome to an opinion. But first of all, you have to understand those doctors work so hard in their 5 years of training, not one day on nutrition, not one day. And he's allowed to have an opinion. But while we know there are hundreds of thousands of deaths a year from sort of, legal drugs, prescription drugs, from either wrong medication, too much medication, whatever, virtually zero. In fact, zero, I think, for the last 7 years from an overdose on vitamins.
I made a mistake in the last program we did, because we were talking about this. And I said that there was a study that showed that there were 3,000 deaths attributed to drugs given and taken in the right dose. Actually, there weren't 3,000, there were 10,000. And then my inside source in the NHS, who handles the litigations, because most settlements, and there's a lot of settlements where people go to sue the NHS for some sort of malpractice, and the vast majority are settled outside. I mean, we are talking about hundreds of millions. I mean, a lot of money is spent settling these. But actually, they said the true figure is 3 times that. So we're looking at 30,000 deaths attributed to prescribed drugs, given and taken in the right dose, not overdoses, just that sort of range. And as you quite rightly say, there has never, and nor will there ever be, a death from vitamin C. It is the most harmless substance. 10 milligrams, the 80 milligrams the doctor was looking up is the RDA, which stands for the ridiculous dietary arbitrary. And yes, it will prevent you from getting scurvy, but no, it will have zero effect if you are under viral attack. But this misinformation, or I would actually call it fake news, goes even further. Because yesterday I was watching the head of Facebook. I think you have the clip as well. Talking.
Jack's signaling at me. What was that, Jack? It's YouTube. Head of YouTube.
Yes. No. I think this is Facebook, but I think it's Facebook. It was just shown on YouTube. Anyway, let's have a look at the clip. and we can.
But then we also talk about removing information that is problematic. Of course, anything that is medically unsubstantiated. So people saying like, take vitamin C, take turmeric, like those all will cure you. Those are the examples of things that would be a violation of our policy. Anything that would go against World Health Organization recommendations would be a violation of our policy. And so remove is another really important part of our policy.
Yeah, you're right. It's YouTube. I think Facebook have a similar policy. And what is, I mean, it's just terrible. That is this is an intelligent person who's running a big organization that we're actually talking on right now. So, fingers crossed. But on Facebook, it's probably even worse. And we've had the equivalent of our 8th yellow flag. And we've been told in no uncertain terms that if we do any more posts on our Facebook on vitamin C in relation to this topic, we will be closed down. Wow. So literally as of today, we are doing no more posts on Facebook. And we've asked people to go to my website, patrickholford.com, and there's a little button where you can sign up for news. And it's only me talking to you. It's not, it's not a wheeze or any advertising or anything. But the conversation on vitamin C and the coronavirus is having now to go off Facebook. But one of the things in that is really also quite astonishing. By the way, one of those doctors in the film is now he's writing to Sir Nick Clegg, who is now living in a place called Atherton outside San Francisco in Silicon Valley. If anyone happens to know that area, there's a lovely picture if you Google it, that where Nick Clegg has moved. It's a £7 million mansion, so you can see a picture of it. I don't have his direct address. I went down the road because Nick Clegg actually lives a few blocks away from me in Putney, so I went to see his mum. We had a very nice chat about her wisteria. She promises me she takes lots of vitamin C whenever she gets cold, and I gave her a copy of the book Flu Fighters. Yeah, we have it here. And I also had a letter for Nick because he's in charge of the misinformation sort of fake news campaign. And she promised that she would send it to him. And this doctor in California, 37 years in emergency medicine, is also going to write to him and hopefully deliver the letter. So I'm not going to stop on this. But actually, I checked out the World Health Organization, which apparently, YouTube and Facebook are following the guidelines of the World Health Organization. And just to quote, and this is in their blueprint for action on coronavirus. It's called their Coronavirus Roadmap. And what it says is in 2 sections, page 36 and 37. 36 says, optimal selection of strategies for supportive care of seriously ill patients. And it mentions vitamin C and steroids. So exactly what we're talking about. Then on page 37, it says other adjunctive interventions with biologic plausibility include vitamin C. Yeah. So it's actually wrong to say that the World Health Organization is saying nothing about it, because they are. And it's wrong. Facebook and YouTube cannot both say that vitamin C, anything to do with vitamin C, treating, preventing, curing coronavirus, reducing duration, reducing symptoms, to say that that is untrue is totally incorrect. And to say that they are following the WHO guidelines, therefore not doing anything about vitamin C, is untrue. So I'm writing to the WHO and I'm writing to Nick Clegg and I'm trying to find out who's in charge of all these things. We're not going to give up, because this is, in my 40 years in nutrition, this is the biggest scandal. This is such an obviously giant, massive scandal. And it is starting to get out, and it will come out. There is no question about it. And the reason why we're writing to all the politicians, all the heads of NHS, all the chief medical officers, et cetera, and documenting it, is that if in the future, and it will become very, very clear that this is the standard way to treat this disease. It will become the standard way. And if we know that all of these people had that information many times over and failed to act, then they're going to have to be accountable for that. It's a bit like when, we knew for many years that sticking mercury, in your fillings
Yeah.
Lots of mercury fillings was an extremely bad idea.
Yeah.
It's a heavy neurotoxin.
Yeah.
Now, that was known and it kind of got accepted, but not officially. So in other words, you never got anything coming out of the British Dental Association. They just
quietly,
yeah. And behind the scenes removed it. And that's what's going to happen here. There probably will not be any public announcement, but they'll just start to use the intravenous vitamin C in ICUs and I don't mind how this happens. I just don't want to be looking at another day, when there are 600 people dying,
And is it also part of the fact that people want to hold on to the belief that there's going to be a miracle drug developed that's going to give a miracle cure? Everybody wants to have that because it's just, how can nature be the best defense? How can upping your vitamin C, which is, just, it's out there, it's there already. Maybe people just want to believe in a miracle drug as opposed to.
No, I mean, we are of course generally all hypnotized, and living in an illusion. Do we want it? No, I don't think so. If somebody said to you, in my left hand I've got a drug, and it kind of works, not very well, but it works, and it has side effects. It's a non-natural substance. And in the other hand, we'll call it a drug, but it's called vitamin C. And it has no side effects. It's actually, a 50th of the cost. Not that you might be paying because it's the NHS, so you get all your drugs free. It has no side effects at all. It's been around forever. It's a very natural substance. Which would you prefer? And I think, given that sort of choice, every member of the public would go for the vitamin C. So I don't think it's us that wants a drug. It's not, us that wants a vaccine. I mean, of course, when you're living in the fear that this thing could kill you, and the only cure will be a vaccine, and we have that mentality that worked for smallpox and so on, then obviously the idea that you could be jabbed with something and never suffer would be great. But if you knew that that taking high dose vitamin C in the early stage of any viral infection is going to dramatically reduce your symptoms and stop you converting to the serious lung disease, if you knew that, or you knew that the odds of that was, very, very high, then, take it or leave it.
And I guess isn't another danger might be, Patrick, that a bit like Bloomberg quoted this number or ratified this number. If you haven't had a heart attack, you need 300 people, numbers needed to treat. You need to treat 300 people. They call it the NNT, numbers need to treat. 300 people taking a statin for 5 years to get one positive outcome. Yeah. And yet doctors believe that if I give it you, it's going to make you be healthy, and the patient thinks, oh, I'm safe now because I've got my statin. Could we end up in exactly the same place where here's this wonderful drug that's supposed to help with COVID, but the reality is the amount of people it really helps is very, very small.
Yeah, and that is the right thing to ask. Every doctor should know the numbers needed to treat. So you say, you're giving me this drug. What are the odds that I'm going to benefit? And they may say it's a NNT of 10. It means that you've got a 1 in 10 chance. If I give this to 10 patients, 1 will be helped. In the case of statins, it's well over 1 in 100, sometimes 1 in 300, depending on your age and the group that you're in. Now, there's also another side to this, which is the numbers needed to treat for harm, right?
Yeah.
So if you were prescribed something, this is just theoretical, and they said, if 10 people take this, 1 will benefit, so you've got a 10% chance of benefiting. And if 10 people take this, 1 will be harmed. You go, hang on a second, I got the same amount of chance of benefiting being harmed. So, I mean, if we take a classic example, this year was better with the flu jab. Last year, the previous year was worse. In the over, I think, 65 category, 2 years back, the benefit was 10%. So in other words, 1 in 10, people having the vaccine would be protected. Or maybe put it another way around. If you were exposed to 10 flus, one of them you'd be prevented from it. Different ways of looking at it. But what's not reported is the numbers needed to treat for harm. Yeah. And it's terribly hidden in the vaccine world. And I only know of 1 placebo-controlled trial, because that's what you have to have, vaccine versus placebo. And what's generally done is most vaccines, and we don't yet know if the COVID-19 vaccine coming out of Oxford is the same, they have to use an agent which is called an adjuvant, and it's usually aluminium. And the purpose is that it causes a reaction of the immune system, a strong enough reaction that it also sees the infectious agent rendered harmless, and then learns and develops antibodies. So in other words, you have to insult your immune system strongly. And they were using mercury in a lot of vaccines. That's gone now. It's still being done in some countries like Africa, but it's basically gone. It's been replaced with aluminium. And aluminium is a substance that your body really doesn't know what to do with. It's just not meant to be injected. So a lot of the adverse reactions of vaccines probably are associated with aluminium. So most of the vaccine studies, so-called placebo, have given either the live vaccine with all the stuff in it, ink, aluminium, or all the stuff in it, ink, aluminium, but not the actual, virus. And then they go, oh, look, there's no difference. In other words, there's just as much adverse effects from the stuff in a vaccine. It's not a placebo-controlled trial. So somebody was asking me, I'm in the at-risk group and I don't really want to have a vaccine, but I would have a vaccine. What's your opinion, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, well, number one, obviously we have to see that it works. Number two, it has to be safe. That means a placebo-controlled trial. It also means that once that's done by the group that make the money out of it, then it has to be done by a group who don't make the money out of it. So we, because that's just kind of logical, if I'm selling you a product, and and I say it's amazing, but that I'm selling it, I'm going to make some money out of it. By the way, I have vitamin C in my supplement range, so I declare this. I get 5% of the trade price or whatever from the people who make it. So if I tell you stuff about vitamin C, quite right, you go, maybe you're just trying to make some money. So yeah, it looks good. I like your study. It's well designed, but at the end of the day, you are financially incentivized to have this study be good. So fair enough. Right. Now let's give the vitamin C to someone else who's not in the payroll, has no vested interest whatsoever, does the study, gets the same result. So once that's done, I said I would have a vaccine, but I'm rather doubt I would have a vaccine that contains aluminium because, I'm a neuroscientist, I'm a psychologist. I don't want to be injecting aluminium into my brain, into my blood. And what's understood now is that aluminium does travel into the brain. So, I don't really want to put aluminium or mercury into my brain, By the way, if your immune system is not working, so if we go back to those, 10 or 20% effectiveness in an older population, it's higher in a younger population. Why? And the answer is the older person's immune system is not so effective. So actually, all the stuff that I write about in Flu Fighters, all the nutrition and the vitamin C and the zinc and getting your sugar down and eating lots of fruit and veg and ginger and etc., all of that boosting the immune system will actually make a vaccine work better. So this is not either or. It actually would make one's immune system function better. I remember in the conversation of the MMR vaccine, which is very, very contentious. And there's no doubt I've been in the field of child health. I've met so many parents whose kids had a massive reaction to that vaccine. So it does occur. And I remember sitting with Chris Van Tulken, the doctor, the twin doctor who does a lot of stuff on the BBC. We were in the House of Lords for some meeting about opioid addiction. So we were both there to sort of help. And he said, oh, are you a vaccine denier? And I said, no, I'm not actually. But are you a vaccine damage denier? Because there is also this, this position where people just think, that there is no such thing. And that just isn't true. Yeah. But so the point here is that, some people do react badly. We're not quite clear why. Yeah. Aluminium may have something to do with it. And until that is unraveled, I'll be a bit cautious. But what I have said to women who have children and have a vaccine like the MMR is because in that moment of the vaccine, you get a massive immune response. Don't guzzle tons of wheat and tons of milk, which are the two most allergy-provoking foods. So in other words, we know that your gut, I mean, for example, your gut is damaged by alcohol and it's damaged by aspirin, ibuprofen. So if I wanted to develop a food intolerance to wheat, what I would do is drink a lot, take a lot of ibuprofen, mess up my gut so it's really leaky, and then just consume lots and lots and lots of wheat. Yeah. Because some of that undigested wheat protein will get through, the immune system will react. So there may even be a strategy when having a vaccine of number one, making sure your immune system is strong, and number two, a certain way to behave to increase that 20% effectiveness even higher. So us nutritionists could actually help the vaccine guys get a safer and more effective vaccine.
Yeah. So if the vaccine does come, I think the takeaway from that, if the vaccine does come, make sure what you're eating at the time is a healthy nutrition diet and avoiding in particular things that could be damaging the immune system. In other words, don't go and have 3 pints of lager and then have your vaccine. I think that, are you okay to stay around for 5 minutes for some quick questions?
Sure.
So many questions coming in for you. Where do we start? Kirsty says, what is your opinion on tap water, i.e. added with fluoride?
Well, I mean, since our body is 2/3 water, I've always felt that we should have the cleanest, purest, water that you can have. And there's a quandary here. If you buy natural mineral water, not spring water simply means it's sprung up out of the ground. And it could be, for example, from a field that's sprayed with pesticides. If it says natural mineral water, it actually has to have proven that it has exactly the same mineral concentration, not only season by season, but over a 5-year period. In other words, the source of the water is extremely deep and consequently unpolluted. So in an ideal world, I would drink natural mineral water. I don't mind if it's naturally fizzy or flat, either is fine. But of course, it's not very ecological to be shipping a whole lot of glass or plastic bottles halfway around the world. I remember Michael Jackson, he actually had an advertising deal with Evian. And the deal was that he could have as much Evian as he liked. And he filled his swimming pool with Evian. Now, given the ecological issues, what I've got a filter. It's actually called the fresh water filter. And it's plumbed in under my sink. And it's got a carbon filter. So actually, if you open it up, it looks a bit like a porous ceramic sort of tube that the water has to pass through this kind of rough, porous ceramic, half an inch or so, which takes out a lot of the bad guys. And it has it will have what we call a 3-micron filter. And that means a filter that would certainly take out any, bacteria or living organisms. I spend my winter in Africa and I have the same thing, but I also have a UV tube, which will, because we're basically using well water, will kill any amoeba. So this is pretty good. It takes out a lot of the bad stuff and it only costs me, it's 200 quid or thereabouts, £25 a year to change the filter. So that's economical. Alternatively, I mean, the sort of Brita type water filters are not quite so good because after a while, they're not really working. So the plumbed in, I think, is the best. You can get reverse osmosis where you completely filter your water and it's down to distilled water. Now that's sort of okay. I mean, it is pure water. It's very, very good. The only thing to be aware of there is we do actually get a lot of the big minerals like calcium, magnesium from our water. And if you drink pure distilled water, you're not getting any minerals from your water. Yeah. So you might just need to be aware of that. Yeah. Maybe you're supplementing minerals.
Great advice. I wrote a whole chapter on it in my book as well because I hate one-use plastic bottles. I think they're terrible for the planet. Also, they quite often have BPA in the plastic, which is dangerous for health. Do you know the only place they banned BPA?
Where?
Babies drinking bottles. So the government know that BPA is bad for us. You can't make a plastic bottle for an infant with BPA in it, but you can still have it in your plastic bottles that everybody has on the single use. So drinking out single-use plastic bottles, not healthy. Fit a water filter like Patrick, a way to go. Kirsty says, should we be giving vitamin C to our children? And if so, how much? Interesting question. All I'll say is I give it my children.
Yeah, no, I do too. And Linus Pauling worked out that what should be the RDA is 2 grams of vitamin C.
Yeah.
And I would say that, it depends a bit on the age of the child. If they're very young, maybe half a gram, 500 milligrams. If they're sort of 7, 8, 9, getting a little bit larger, in other words, half your body weight, then probably up to a gram, best taken 500 milligrams twice a day.
Yeah.
And if you're giving more than you need because you get loose bowels.
In fact, that's what Andrew comes on and says, hey, what have you got to lose with vitamin C? I mean, the worst happens, you get the runs, and then you don't give them so much next time round. But hey, I'm not a doctor, so I better be quiet, so I get shut up. Sheila says exactly as Andrew Hunt says, it makes no sense that governments won't do it. Sheila, you're on the same page. Gandalf the Grey says, I've heard zinc should be taken with copper. Is that right? I've not heard that one.
No, it doesn't need to be taken with copper, but there's a way of talking about this. There is an antioxidant enzyme which has the rather unfortunate name of SOD, or superoxide dismutase, SOD. And it runs on zinc, copper, and manganese. And you need about 15, at least 10 to 15 times more zinc than copper. So if you were eating nothing, and you were just supplementing, for example, if you supplemented 15 milligrams of zinc, you should also supplement 1 milligram of copper. They are, of course, both in whole foods to some extent. So, you do need a little bit of copper, but not much. And copper's in water pipes. I'll tell you a very interesting thing. I was on a beach many years ago in Greece, having a lovely holiday, and the guy lying on the towel next to me, learning to windsurf we were, was a headmaster of a special school for children with special needs. And I said to him, I mean, this is really early 80s. I said, I can tell how your children behave just from a sample of hair. And we made a deal. I said, when you get back, you send me 10 samples of hair, and I will analyze the mineral concentration of them. And by the way, the lab that I now use at Surrey University can measure down to not 1 part per million, not 1 part per billion, which is 1,000 million, not 1 part per trillion, which is 1,000 billion, but 1 part per quillion, which is the equivalent of dropping a lump of sugar in the Mediterranean, have it dissolve equally, and being able to detect the chemical difference, right?
Wow.
And they're down to a 10% degree of accuracy on 1 part per billion. Anyway, I sent these hair samples off for analysis, and 7 were fine. There were 2 that were high in copper, and there was 1 that was very high in lead. And I said, for the one very high in lead, this child will be impulsive, aggressive, unable to concentrate, etc. And they actually said, this is the worst child we've ever had in the school. We've had numerous psychotherapists, medication, and eventually this child was giving ECT, electroconvulsive shock therapy. And it turned out this child was absolutely loaded with lead. I don't know where from. Now, when you have too much copper, it's quite hard to have too much zinc. I mean, you don't want to have more than you need. But when you have too much copper, it actually makes you more anxious and paranoid. And so I said, these 2 will probably be more anxious and paranoid. Anyway, it turned out it was a school teacher and his wife, right? And they had built a new house on the grounds of the school, which was a soft water area. And soft water means it's a bit more acidic. And when you have a new house with lots of copper pipes and the water is soft, you actually pick up copper into the water. This is, if you've ever been in a house where you see the green staining,
yeah,
that's the copper.
Yeah.
And it turned out, and we did blood tests, is that the wife had developed some quite extreme anxiety and had been prescribed medication for it. The husband, it didn't seem to affect, quite so much. And she was, in fact, being copper poisoned from the water in her pipes.
Wow.
So we get copper not just from food, but also pipes. We only get zinc from food.
But we don't want too much of it, is what you're saying.
No.
Andrew said, just bought your book, Patrick. Thank you very much indeed. Leah says, I'm glad Patrick corrected the fact about prescription drugs and deaths. Opioids, drugs of choice by so many doctors. Also, steroids can have very strange side effects. Thank you for telling us that. Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah, steroids are very strictly short-term use, emergency situations.
And that's why you said don't start it too early when you're in hospital, isn't it? As always, Patrick, run over by 1/4 because I could listen to you all day long. Thanks for coming on, mate, and thanks for doing what you're doing. Let's hope your message gets through to the powers to be, because looking at all that research and that 4-minute clip you sent us, there seems to be a lot of evidence pointing towards vitamin C, steroids at that later stage, and the anticoagulants. So
yes,
again,
and if there's any way you can share the clip, the YouTube link with the people that are watching,
will do,
in your group. We actually loaded it up, I think yesterday, and there's been about 6,000 people have viewed it. We want it to go viral.
Yeah.
And we want a lot of people to see that. I think we have to wake up the critical mass of the population. Agreed. And and keep working on our politicians. I'm sure we will get there.
Absolutely. Patrick, as always, my friend, absolutely fabulous speaking. I can't wait for this to end so we can all go out and have some real food together.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Cheers, mate. Take care. That was the absolutely brilliant Patrick Holford, giving us all the information from around the world. Up all night long, speaking to China and California. He's so well connected with doctors around the world, and just showing what could be possibly achieved if we change our stance here in the UK. Thank you for spending time with us again today. It's been an absolute pleasure. Also to Jon Burgess, who was with us earlier on today. His website, jonburgesswellbeing.co.uk. What a fabulous guest he was indeed. Thank you to you all for your questions. If you can, give this video the thumbs up. If you can, subscribe. If you can, share with all your friends. Then the more the merrier, the more we can get this word out. It is so, so important that people see a different view on what could be a very, very good way of helping people in hospital with COVID. And let's hope that we don't all get shut down, as Patrick was saying then, because that would be an absolute tragedy. If you do find that we're not here tomorrow, you'll know why.